I got you. You're gonna be all right.
This cannot possibly be real.
My name is Orela. I'm here to help.
Hello everybody, Raven Knight here, coming at you with a Dead by Daylight Analyze video, but this is a video unlike any other, guys, because guys, let me be real. I said in a previous Dead by Daylight video that I prefer it when Dead by Daylight and Behavior make original killers and survivors, because you get the chance to be creative and make really cool stories. You're not having to rip off of licenses. And everyone kept telling me, yeah, but Raven, what about stuff like the Houndmaster? And I tried to be like, okay, yeah, but that was one bad apple, you know, it's one bad egg. You can't judge the whole by that. But after reading over Orela's lore again, and remembering how bad it is, you know what? I'm going to retract what I said. Please, go back to licenses. Just do licenses. Don't make anything original if this is the route you're taking. Orela's lore is one of the worst pieces of lore I've seen from the survivors so far. It's not as bad as Houndmaster. I wouldn't go as bad as that. But it is so confusing. Now, some people are going to say, is it worse than Vittorio's? Here's my response to that. I hate who Vittorio is. That's what I hate about him. I hate Vittorio as a person. Orela I don't hate as a person, but the lore behind Orela is so mind-numbingly stupid I couldn't tackle this alone, so I brought in my brother with me, who is going to help me walk through this, and we're going to discuss just how bad this is. Guys, I'm not gonna lie to you. This is pretty abysmal. And to help you out, we're going to read the whole lore together. Lark is going to help me out. You ready, Lark?
I think so.
Okay, all right, here we go. So let's get started. Orela Rose grew up on Chicago's far north side in Rogers Park, just blocks from Lake Michigan. Her dad was a firefighter and her mom was a nurse. She couldn't help but observe how much they sacrificed to help others, and she knew she would one day do the same in her own way. Keep that in mind. We're coming back to that. Orela majored in hospitality at Lakehead University. Freshman year, she bonded with Emily, a girl in her restaurant management class who helped her through her transition. Emily was a huge fan of horror movies, and she regularly listened to recordings of an old podcast called All Things Wicked This Night. The host, Sable Ward, often talked about the stories of a horror writer named Cliff Barra. Many were made into movies in the 1950s and became cult classics. The art director, Alex DeMauro, survived the horrors of war and infused the macabre settings and costumes with a palpable sense of dread. Orela and Emily couldn't get enough. They hung out at the Hard Boiled Cafe, a coffee shop and bookstore with a 1950s mystery theme. They so loved the atmosphere, they made plans to one day open a themed restaurant of their own. They would create a dining experience that recreated the horror stories, character sets, and costumes of Barra and DeMauro, a place where people could escape their humdrum lives to spend an hour or two living on the edge. The idea is so exciting that they created a haunted house for Halloween to try out some of those ideas. Before we keep on reading, I'm going to draw you back to what was said in that very first paragraph, where she said, she couldn't help but observe how much they sacrificed to help others, and she knew she would one day do that in her own way. What did you major in?
Hospitality.
Hospitality, because that's sacrificing for others. Absolutely, that's totally being a firefighter or a nurse or a doctor or police officer or any of those things.
Yeah.
So clearly, she didn't have a goal to do that right away. So that was a little odd. Just a little. It's almost like someone started writing the lore, set it aside. Someone else came on later and said, "I'm going to write what I want now," but. Bear it all in mind, we'll put that to the side, because it gets so much worse.
It sounds to me what they want is like, hey, we want someone who's like a firefighter or a paramedic, someone who's a first responder, but we're really in love with the idea of making them like a horror nerd and obsessed with that, and they wanted to work in like the weird like cafe or whatever.
What it is, and we'll talk about this later in the end, but what this is it's them trying to force a connection between Orela and the overall lore of Dead by Daylight. Because you notice they name drop Sable Ward, they name drop Cliff Barra, they're name dropping characters that have shown up in previous lore bits. What they wanted to do, what they probably did, and again we'll talk more about this, they probably wanted to create a lore for her as an EMT, but then remembered, oh yeah, we want to tie all these together, we want to make our Dead by Daylight cinematic universe, and so they decided to quickly shove in some extra stuff to tie into everything else.
All you have to do though is just say like, "Hey, I'm gonna try and like this character's gonna try like dedicate herself to becoming an EMT or firefighter, first responder, or whatever." But she also just is fascinated by this other stuff.
Yeah,
because EMTs have hobbies.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, you could have easily done that. But anyway, so back to the haunted house idea. Here's what things get crazy. They commandeered an empty college dormitory to build the haunted madhouse of doom. I don't even want to know what kind of red tape they had to go through to get that kind of permission from the college, but okay. On Halloween, dozens of students lined up to experience the terror of an insane asylum based on one of Cliff Barr's most celebrated stories. Orela led groups of laughing and screaming college students past padded cells and torture chambers filled with axe murderers, groaning zombies, and wailing ghosts. The shock therapy room featured a jury-rigged shock table. Emily played the part of a writhing patient wired up for shock treatment. She wore a headpiece fitted with electrodes that would light up and smoke and spark once Orela told one of the students to throw the switch. They used the shock table dozens of times, and each time Emily would shake and shriek like a banshee, eliciting a chorus of delighted screams. I'm going to pause there, because I think we need to take a moment and appreciate the truth. This is something I tell everyone. Whenever I get into a debate with someone and they try to say, but they have a college degree, they went to this college, they went to this university. I'm going to say this, and it needs to sink into your mind. Getting a college degree does not mean you're intelligent. These are college students who actually did something so stupid, I don't even think a child would make this same mistake. They put a live person on a slab with a real shock therapy thing on their head that actually flashes and sparks when a switch is pulled, meaning electricity is going through it, and she put it on her head. Not on a dummy, not on a fake person, but on herself. Did they get any permission to do this? Did they have engineers or electricians overlook this? Did they get this approved by someone?
I'm going to go ahead and answer your question there. No, they say it's jury-rigged.
Yep.
So here's the issue we have here. It's like outfitted with electrodes. So the thing is like, everyone's like, hey, we put some light bulbs on it so it'll like flash. But also there's some smoke going on, so there's some pyrotechnics. So this wasn't professionally made. This was amateur made. So I highly doubt that the university that they're doing this at knew that was going to be a part of the thing. They probably just heard haunted house, like, oh, sure, whatever, that sounds fun. But that specific part probably was not greenlit.
Yeah. So let's find out how this ends, right? Let's find out how this time, however, a frayed wire shorted out and Emily didn't shriek but went rigid as her face contorted into a silent scream. There were sparks and smoke and the smell of burnt meat. Miraculously, Emily was still alive after Orela pulled the plug. They called for an ambulance, and as they waited, Emily's breathing grew shallower and shallower. Orela felt helpless, useless, worthless. By the time the EMTs finally arrived, Emily was gone. Oh my God, is that the consequences of my goddamn actions?
Gee, looks like you shouldn't play with electricity like that.
Again, going to college does not make you smart. Going to college does not make you smart. An idiot could have told you, let's not put that on your effing head.
Was it using like a battery-powered something?
I won't even know how they jury-rigged it. Were they majoring in electrician?
No, they were majoring in hospitality.
How did they rig this up? Did they get an actual electrician to come and help do it? And if they did the electrician not tell them, hey, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't put this on a living human?
Well, here's the thing. The bare minimum voltage you need to kill a human being is 42 volts. But if you can run to like 42 to 220 volts. It's just, like, I don't know what they were thinking when they were putting this together, because they didn't buy anything, like a prop or anything. They jury-rigged this. So that already tells me, like, that you're already dabbling in dangerous territory.
Now, let's keep going, because it gets worse. Next paragraph. The very next day, Orela dropped out of college and started training to become an EMT. She never ever wanted to feel that helpless again. Her parents were surprised but supported her, and within a year, Orela was driving an ambulance and saving lives. Stop! Right there. No. The very next day, right after her friend dies in her arms, right after her best friend in college dies in her arms due to her negligence or their stupidity, because I'm not going to take Emily out of the culpability here. I'm sure she had a part in it. She was the one who volunteered to lay there and put the thing on her head. Look, here's the first thing. If you have a soul, Orela, if you have a soul, you should be broken over this. You should be taking time to mourn. You should be taking time to be with the family, be with your family, you know, work through the trauma of what you just did. But not the very next day, you've decided to go into EMT work. Let's leave it, but let's pretend you don't have a soul. You feel nothing. You're dead inside, okay? You don't need that time to mourn. Okay, you're still going through legal battles. In fact, Lark and I went through the legal stuff to find out what kind of legal shit you could be facing as a result of this. Lark, would you help me out here?
All right, so here's the thing. I do have a pre-law degree, but it came out of a cereal box, so bear that in mind. Not really, but sometimes it feels like it. So, specifically here, what she could be charged with, and I want to use that word could, because it depends on if somebody presses charges or anything going on like that. Manslaughter, potentially, though that's a stretch in my opinion, or more likely criminal negligence. Now, the reason I say criminal negligence is because she technically did sort of have a duty over. Now, here's the thing. This is where things get a little muddy because I got my pre-law degree in the United States, which again means practically nothing. Based on what they say, if what they say is true, the university is like Lakehead University. That's a college in Ontario, which means they're going under Canadian law. So I had to look up Canadian legal codes, which thankfully same source, so it's very, very similar. But the thing is here, under Section 217.1, it like discusses the idea of criminal negligence, and here the idea is that there is imposed a legal duty on a person who undertakes or is in a position of authority to direct how another individual performs a specific task. The person in the position of authority must take responsible steps to prevent injury or another form of harm arising at the workplace. So, they're both college students. They have both been given permission by the college to set up this haunted house. Now, they probably did not go into the specifics with the college, what they were doing. And then she jury-rigged this little electrode set, which means it's not professionally made. There's no warranty. There's no guarantee or whatever. They've made this themselves. She had a responsibility to make sure this thing was safe. And I know it's like, oh, but it worked a couple times. But again, this is jury-rigged, so you would have a responsibility after a couple tours or so to double check to make sure that this thing is still safe. Now, because of the unique situation of this, it is highly possible the police looked at this and ruled this was an accident, so one may not want to press charges. However, if the parents of the other girl want to press charges, she could very well find herself in court. However, my guess, though, is she would probably get into a legal battle not with the parents, but probably with the university, because she just caused a death on their campus. And that's going to cause problems, and now the university itself is going to be potentially in a legal battle as well, because they're going to have bigger bucks. So Emily, that's her name?
Emily's the one who died.
Yeah, and so Emily's parents may sue them because they have deeper pockets. And the thing is, if that happens, there's a chance they could try and deflect the blame back on to our MC right here.
Yeah.
So the thing is, just quitting the school, I'm not 100% sure she would be charged, but I definitely think there would be a police investigation that would go on. And so she's like, oh, I'm quitting college and going to join an EMT. That sounds great, but the problem is the police are going to find that suspicious, and that's going to make them investigate even harder. Honestly, to rewrite this better, it should be after dealing with the proper authorities, she left college like a couple months later to pursue a career as an EMT. That would have made more sense. And I get they're trying to like expedite, like they're trying to show like how serious this was to her that she left the next day. But it's like, legally speaking, that's a poor idea.
Exactly, and that's what I wanted to really hone in on. The very next day, Orela dropped out of college and started training to become an EMT. No, that's not how that works. Because for best case scenario, she doesn't face any legal battles, but she still has to mourn and get over the death of her friend. Worst case scenario, she's brought up on charges for criminal negligence and could be facing a not only indictment but conviction. So there's no way that's happening. But you know what? Let's keep going. Orela was driving an ambulance and saving lives. She had a natural talent for soothing and calming those who needed her most. Both nurturing and protective, she had a knack for taking charge and bringing people together. Oh, that's sweet.
Well,
makes you forget all about the friend you fried.
To be fair, that natural talent, it's very easy to be soothed once you're getting hit with morphine.
Still, she never forgot Emily or her dream of opening a horror-themed restaurant based on the movies of Bara and Damaro. You know, you'd think that after that incident, you'd hate anything.
Honestly, that would be a more of a big character development. She grew to like hate this stuff,
wouldn't that make more sense?
And then getting thrown into this realm of the entity, which has a lot similar to that, would probably disgust her.
But anyway, working as an EMT, she knew it would take her years to save enough money. But then one day, oh folks, wait for it. But then one day she rescued John Kingsley, a man worth billions. Called to the scene of a terrible car crash, she found he wasn't breathing. She instantly performed CPR and resuscitated his heart with a portable defibrillator. His doctor later said he would have surely died if not for Orela. Grateful for saving his life, he offered to finance her dreams and gifted her an old building located at 900 Boulevard Lane across an old cemetery. All right. So first we have the stupid that in college she and her friend set up a horror house and jury-rigged an electric node that killed her friend. Then we have the nonsense where she decides right after her friend dies, I'm quitting and becoming an EMT, which would not happen. Now the stars have aligned. She still wants to do her dream, and it just so happens she saves a billionaire. Just so happens that he is so grateful he wants to finance her dream. Just so happens he doesn't want to thank all the other EMTs who surely helped, because you know an EMT doesn't drive out alone. They're a team. So it's just so great that he didn't want to finance any of their other more cost-effective dreams. And just so happens that there is a location near an old cemetery that would make for a perfect restaurant location. Just the stars aligned for this girl. So just to be clear here, everything is just lining up roses. Like, build an awesome haunted house. The university asked no questions. Killed your friend? That's fine. You won't face any legal trouble. End up saving the life of a billionaire. He's going to finance everything you need. Because we're living in fairy tale land, bro. Don't you realize that the world exists to give you what you want? Do you know what we call this in writing?
Deus ex machina?
No, not even that. Contrivances. These are blatant plot holes and contrivances. How does this work? It makes no sense. When the universe is literally lining up to give you everything you need, usually we call that a Mary Sue, but today we'll just call it a contrivance. Okay? And these contrivances are stacking up. I might have ignored one or two, but now we're on the third contrivance.
Well, here's my issue with this. Because, they started out this whole thing saying she saw the sacrifice of her parents and she knew, gosh dang it, that's what I want to do. That I knew I want to help people the same way. And yet, she starts doing that after this traumatic experience, but that her goal of helping other people is superseded by the desire to build a haunted restaurant.
Yeah. Make it make sense. All right. Anyway, let's keep going. With financing in the perfect location, Orela hired some friends to help her design the most immersive horror experience ever. Screams in the Dark would open only one weekend a month to start. I'm going to repeat that. Screams in the Dark, the name of the restaurant, would open only one weekend a month to start. Each time with a completely unique set, theme, and menu. Let's stop there. I could keep going. Let's just stop there. You're opening one weekend a month. Not only that, you're changing up the unique design and setup of the restaurant as well as the menu each time. I'm sorry, bullshit. As people who have worked in the restaurant industry will tell you, that don't work. You can't do that. I'm pretty sure that this billionaire she saved would look at her and go, yeah, I'm not financing that. If you want to open a restaurant, that's one thing, but I'm not financing that. That's ridiculous. For one thing, changing up your theme and menu every time is going to be very difficult to get repeat business because some people go to restaurants just to get the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so I worked in Longhorns. We had guests who showed up and got the same thing every time, and they showed up for the same atmosphere every time. You change it up, you're going to destroy repeat business quite a lot. You open up only one weekend a month, you're not going to be able to make the money necessary to pay for all this. And depending on how many employees you have, you're not going to be able to pay your employees. You will not be able to make the money necessary to keep this place afloat. Not even putting aside the reality of supply. How are you going to get the food and ingredients and materials necessary to do this? How are you going to get the money to pay for the theme and the atmosphere and the music and the props you're going to want to use? How are you going to pay for this when you're only open 1 weekend a month? And people are like, but to start, she's going to open it more than that. We'll get to that. But, Lark, would you like to say something about that?
Well, the thing is with this, like, maybe I could buy it if it was, like, change it every quarter.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. That means if you do it once a month, 12 times a year, you are going to be changing the theme of the restaurant. And it's still limited to just horror. So that means completely new costumes, completely new decorations, and completely new menu.
Yeah.
So not only do you have all of the struggles of a regular restaurant, but now you have a lot of the struggles of a theme park.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have to worry about like how you're going to get it staffed, because the thing is, even let's just say the cost of the food, they put the cost of the food at such a thing they actually do somewhat either break even or turn a profit, which I already doubt, because unless they're all just billionaire horror aficionados just really interested in this, and
we'll get to that.
Yeah, but unless again the stars just continue to align,
and they are,
yeah, then there's no realistic way this would work. But the big thing there is employees.
Mm-hmm.
Because employees are going to have a hard time keeping up with this, because they are going to have this is going to have to be a part-time position. And for maybe the servers or something, you could make that work. But what about the cooks?
Yep.
Because the cooks, that's going to be a harder sell to do.
Mm-hmm.
And just have like 1 weekend out of the month dedicated to that. I know, like, oh, we're going to expand further. Still, it's going to be kind of rough.
Yep. But wait for it. We're actually getting into that, Lark. Wait for it. Here we go. Let's keep reading. I know that we went off on that tangent, but that's why I brought Lark, because we got to talk about this. Okay. Soon, it was all horror enthusiasts could talk about. Again, the stars align. Never mind the reality that you actually have to advertise your business and push your business to get it out there. It's not a commercial thing. You've got to advertise your business. So how did you pay for that? Did the billionaire pay for that too? Whatever. Soon it was all horror enthusiasts could talk about. People loved the Barra Tomorrow aesthetic, and many wanted Orela to open 6 days a week. But for Orela, it wasn't about the money. She was perfectly content saving lives Monday through Friday and creating horror and mayhem once a month. So, to make sure we all understand each other, the stars aligning in, everyone loves your restaurant. It's the thing every horror enthusiast is talking about. Never mind the fact that not every horror enthusiast is going to really love food or care about food. And you probably don't have enough horror enthusiasts within your area to finance your thing unless they're just coming in from all over the country. But leave that aside. They want her to open 6 days a week. But for Orela, it's not about the money, even though it was someone else's money that bought this for you. She's perfectly content saving lives Monday through Friday and creating horror and mayhem once a month. So she has no interest in expanding the restaurant or growing it beyond what it is, even though what she's doing is financial suicide. This is asinine.
Well, you're already dealing with the struggles of being an EMT. And I don't know how you manage to like get it concrete and scheduled. Like, oh yeah, you just work Monday through Friday,
right?
Because EMTs have like they're even like I don't know specifically how like firefighters and EMTs work in shifts and all that, but I don't think it's like, oh, you can just go pick Monday through Friday and work like normal things. Like I think there's certain shifts like, hey, for this shift you got to do this shift for that. Honestly, that would make more sense for the reason why she says she only does it 1 weekend a month is because I can only afford to oversee it 1 weekend a month because of my EMT schedule. But even then, here's the thing. You could potentially help out your employees that you hire out by saying like, hey, they want it 6 days a week. Go ahead and have that doing. Hire a manager who can properly do that. You know, you have friends that are in this business. Mm-hmm. Someone that's presumably been like you have like a right hand or something. Have them be promoted to general manager. You're the owner. General manager can oversee it for the 6 days out of the week. And you can show up like once a month to make sure things are going all right. This would allow the cooks to have a steady income as well, servers to have steady incomes as well, so they wouldn't probably have such a high turnover rate. Mm-hmm. Because if this is as advertised, there are probably a lot of like certain people that are in the food and restaurant industry that would really love working at a themed restaurant like this.
Probably.
But you're killing yourself by making this a thing like, oh, we only do it one weekend a month.
But hold on, guys, because Lark, believe it or not, it gets worse. Get this. We're going to keep reading. One time, she themed the experience around a borrowed story about a mysterious fog that transported victims to other dimensions. Some believe the words in the story were cursed and somehow made readers disappear. She laughed those superstitions off until later that night when a black fog rose up around her. She hurried outside, but the black fog was everywhere. She froze suddenly and called out to her friends. No one answered. Then she heard cries for help, calling out to her from the dark. Orela didn't panic. She never panicked, except for that one time when her friend died, but let's not talk about that. She merely assessed the situation and pushed through the thickening fog until she froze with a sudden realization. The sound that sounded like her cries, and they seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. For the first time in years, Orela felt a shudder run down her spine as she realized her dream had somehow led her into a living nightmare. A nightmare not unlike the one described in Barra's cursed story. And as she processed this strange observation, the anguished cries came again and again, louder and more desperate. Only this time there were many different voices, and one of them sounded like Emily. Instantly, Orela shook off her superstitions and became all business as she urgently searched the dark abyss for the wounded and dying before it was too late. So, that's the lore. How did this get worse? Well, I want you to think about this for just a second, guys. I want you to think about this for just a second. The restaurant aspect of her lore was only added to explain how she went into the fog. Think about it, because what it says is they decided to do one day they decided to do the theme around a certain book about a dark fog. Everyone told her it wasn't a good idea. She laughed about it, and then the fog claimed her. That's the reason. That whole bit about the restaurant thing, get this, guys. I want to play a game with you. Let's remove the whole restaurant angle from the story. Let's just take that whole restaurant bullshit out of the story and make it about a girl whose best friend died and she couldn't save her in college. So she decides to become an EMT to save lives. And then one day while going out to try to save someone, she ends up wandering into the fog. Sure. Not an exciting piece of lore. You could probably add some dressing to it, add some fun to it, but you'd get the exact same thing. The only reason the restaurant thing exists is to say, hey guys, remember, we have a Dead by Daylight universe. We have this cinematic universe where we have all these named characters like Sable Ward and Cliff Barra and all these other characters that we've mentioned in all this other lore. See, we're referencing it here. Never mind the fact that it doesn't tie into anything. Never the fact that it's entirely irrelevant. Never mind that it makes zero fucking sense when you really sit down and think about it. And the best part, guys, we're about to go into her perks in a minute. Not one of them have to do with running a restaurant or about Cliff Barra or about horror in general. They are do no harm, duty of care, and rapid response. All of them are about being an EMT. None of them are about running a restaurant. So what does that tell me? It tells me this. Originally, the lore around Orela was that they were a person who was going to be an EMT, and while going out to save someone, they ended up going into the fog. But someone came along and said, no, we're not doing this individual lore thing anymore. Everything's got to be connected. Everything's got to be tied together. Let's try to force Cliff Barra and Sable Ward in there somehow. How are we going to do that? Let's make her want to run a restaurant. How are we going to do that? Do we know the first damn thing about running a restaurant? No, and we're going to prove that by not thinking about this for one iota of a millisecond. This lore, guys, here's the thing. Like I said, I hate Vittorio Toscano's lore because Vittorio Toscano is an idiot. I hate Orela's lore, not because she's an idiot, although could be. I hate her lore because it makes no fucking sense. And, to add on to that, it is all nonsensical. It is all contrivances after contrivances after contrivances. The stars just align for this person. And it was clearly written with the hope of, hey guys, look, see, we tied everything together. Look at that. See, you know that name. That's Sable Ward's name. That's her podcast. Hey, you know that name. That's Cliff Barra. We mentioned that a few times. It is merely there for someone to point and go, look, I recognize that reference.
If I may.
You may.
I think I can reconcile this.
Go for it.
If you, so you want to have the EMT and the restaurant connection. Here's what you do. Don't have it be her and Emily. Have a third friend be involved. And here's what I'm saying with this. She grows up. She knows that she wants to be. She knows that she wants to help people in some capacity. Whatever. But eventually, she forgets about that, and she and her three friends, or her two friends, go off to this university, and they're in hospitality or whatever, and she might be studying medicine or whatever. But Emily and the other friend are studying hospitality, and so they say, "Hey, we're setting up this horror theme park, this haunted house on campus. Would you be willing to help out with us?" And because you've got like first aid training or something, you can also help be on standby for that. And she goes, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Goes over. Incident happens. Same incident happens. Her Emily dies. And because of that, she sort of swears off horror. She thinks that it's like there's a taboo about it. She's like, no, I only want to dedicate my lifetime to helping people. And so instead of pursuing becoming a doctor or whatever, she drops out entirely just to go to EMT so she can start saving lives as soon as possible to cope with the fact she couldn't save one. The other friend, however, moves on, and despite the complaints and the objections of Orela, that's her name, right? Mm-hmm. Despite the complaints and objections, she goes through and she continues to pursue this idea, and she establishes this horror-themed restaurant, and it'll have a more reasonable whatever. Still being a good friend, she occasionally goes by to support it, but her heart's just not in it. However, one day she calls up Orela and says, "Hey, I'm going to do this fog-themed thing," and Orela immediately gets bad vibes about it and says, "Do not do this. I've heard bad things. We've already played with this fire once before. I don't want anyone else to get hurt." So doesn't listen. Then a few weeks later, she gets the call that there's an emergency at that restaurant, and so she goes in to try and rescue her friend, and then but the kitchen and the restaurant have all fogged up, and she goes through trying to chase the cries, only to get trapped in the fog trying to chase that friend.
And you know what, guys? That was a much better story, and Lark literally just came up with it on the fly.
Yep.
Guys, it takes no effort to try to come up with better lore than this. So it makes you wonder how they could have come up with something so brain dead. What do you think, Lark? How could they have done that?
I have to agree with what you said. I think they just started out we want an EMT, but they wanted to connect it. And there was probably just one or two people that were at the writing table at Behavior that just really fell in love with the idea of a haunted restaurant idea. And they're probably like, oh, we would really love this idea. Or maybe they actually had been to something that was somewhat like this, and they was just like, we really, really, really just want to add this into the lore. So they hand-fisted it in without thinking, is this logical or does this flow well at all? And they looked at it and said, good enough, and then called it a day. Just like the electrodes, they jury-rigged it. And when you jury-rig a story, it's going to come out wonky.
Well, with that all out of the way, you now know our thoughts on the lore and why it's awful, and you even got us offering an idea that could have fixed it. But let's move on to the perks, because that's what you care about. So, do no harm. When healing another survivor, depending on their accumulated hook stages, you benefit from the following effects. Your altruistic healing speed is increased by 50% per hook stage to a maximum of 100. And you also increases the progress of great healing skill checks by 3% per hook stage up to a maximum of 6%. So in other words, the more hook stages the survivor you're healing is at, the faster you heal them. I use this one. It's pretty handy. I like this one, especially if you rescue someone right off the hook. It's a great way to heal them up very quickly and get them on the move again. I do like this perk. It's very helpful. Next up is Duty of Care. While healthy, taking a protection hit causes all of the survivors within 12 meters of your location to benefit from the following effects. They get a 25% boost to their speed for 6 seconds. Honestly, this is a really good perk. I tried to actually use it once in a match, but the survivors were trolling around and being silly with the killer, and then when I tried to ruin their fun by actually engaging in the play, they had me die. So I already don't like this perk, even though I'm sure it's just fine. But, hey, you know what? It's what it is. And finally, rapid response. Alright, so when you perform a rushed action to exit a locker, so in other words, you hold down the dash button and jump out of the locker, it automatically triggers rapid response. You see the aura of the killer for 2 seconds, and it causes you to become exhausted. And it lasts for 20 seconds. Let me be real. To me, that's pretty much useless. I see no use for it. If you're up against stealth killers, their aura is going to be hidden regardless. And, worst of all, it's only for 2 seconds. I tried using this perk, and I actually looked around for, like, trying to find them, and I couldn't see them. Like, there were moments where it's like, oh, I just saw the aura, and it's gone again. So I really don't see a lot of use for this, especially when you have all kinds of other really good aura reading perks that do so much better. So I wouldn't even bother with this one if I'm being honest. And that is all there is to say about Orela Rose. And if I'm being honest, guys, like I said, this has got to be one of the worst pieces of lore from any of the survivors I've seen. Like I said, not as bad as the Houndmaster, but you can see why I thought it was contrived, and you can see why I brought in backup to help me deal with this. This was awful.
Yeah.
Lark, any final thoughts before we close out?
Just, I don't know. Don't ham-fist your stories. I think that's the idea. Contrivances can only get you so far.
Agreed. All right, well, thank you so much, guys, and as always, we will see you in our next video. Take care.